Welcome to ZenMadman's day number 18 of the thing that I'm doing. Open limping the hijack is this person. I'm going to check. Pretty decent hand to get a free flop with. I flop bottom set. Not bad. I think, there's going to be a lot of not great turn and river cards, but I do have a spade blocker. I have backdoor straight draw. Say a 9 comes completing the 1 straight. That'll help me a little bit. I don't really want to build a pot. Basically, all of the turn cards that aren't a, let's see, a Jack, 10, 5 board pairing card are not fantastic. Not super sure what to do here. Let's see how much I could make it. I could make it 20. I don't think that's really a good plan. I'm going to call and we'll see what happens. Here on the turn, I think... Now I feel like maybe I want to get in against this, like, not huge stack. They bet pretty small. I think I would be happy to get it in against the small blind. However, I do have the smallest of boats. So I don't think this is a hand that I really jam a lot of money in. I think I try to get to the showdown. 10's not a bad card because, first of all, it puts the flush out there. So if somebody had a flush draw, great. Second of all, I'm blocking the 10, so queen 10 isn't that likely. I'm going to win the hand. And I just don't think that's a spot where I could have gotten a lot of value. I could have check raised and gotten maybe a queen to call. And maybe I can lead out the river. What the? So the person I was saying maybe can call with a queen had ace, jack, 4, 3 with no spades. So we pretty much won the maximum there against the opponent's actual hands. This might be fine as far as like an overlimping hand, but it's not very good, right? It's like multi-gapped. It's every other card. That's not how you make a straight. The 10 would be like nice, but not very much. But so yeah, the last hand, I had a hand that on the turn wasn't that likely to get beat if it was already good, unless they had specifically a queen. And so inducing bluffs, letting the flush come. I think the other person had a flush, right? Yeah, so the person on my right who wasn't betting did make a flush on the river. You could argue for a small bet on the river, but especially since it was 3 ways, and the one player who had been betting, it kind of seemed like they probably weren't going to keep bluffing if they were bluffing, and maybe I can get a call from a queen, and if I get raised, maybe I just fold. But I feel like my hand wasn't... I'm still talking about the hand, so I'm going to just mark it, and we'll just talk about it more later. But I'm pretty happy so far with how I played it. Here, this player now is potting the river, which would suggest a flush, or maybe just the ace of spades. I didn't see all of the action to this point, but we did see them not bluff the other hand 3 ways. On the river, they did bluff flop, they bluff turn. Kind of like a half-hearted bluff on the turn, that other hand. I think 10, 8, 7 with 1 suit with a 4 isn't going to cut it. Going to fold. Yes, the open raise is minimum. I actually was going to fold even if it folded to me on the button. So we have an opponent who is making some min raises. And I'll just make a mark of that. Let's see. I have to click into this. 2x RFI from hijack. Just so that we remember that player is that player, should it ever come up. Queen 10, 7, 8 with a suit to the queen. If it was queen, jack, 9, 7, which would have the same number of gaps, but a better structure, I believe that is a hand that I would want to play. This one I think I'm not even going to look up. I don't... Fine, I'll look it up. All right, you talked me into it. I know no one said anything. Pre-flop. All right, so having all of those diamonds usually isn't very good, but they ended up making a straight. Being against double-suited kings. What was the pre-flop action there? Let's check it out. Let's see. Pre-flop goes raise and then call, call, call. So this person in the small blind flatted their double-suited kings. Certainly a hand strong enough to 3-bet, but I'm not positive whether we're supposed to 3-bet that out of position, because if we get 4-bet, maybe we're supposed to fold. However, they're against such a short stack. That's a scenario. Yesterday, I was talking to the Ethical Panda about like 3-betting, like with with kings, with double suited kings? Are we 4-betting them? Usually, I don't think we want to get 4-bets in, but when somebody only has 25 blinds, that's a scenario where it's like, yeah, you know, double suited kings, like I'll get it in for 25 blinds against anyone who's not like really tight. Because our level of exposure, if we happen to be up against aces, sure, we're still going to be behind in equity, but it's not going to be a real deep stack problem. And, you know, the post-flop playability that we have is reduced a little bit, or the value of it, because we're deeper. I'm trying to remember this one. I think this might be a raise. Having the suited ace is a big deal. Having 2 wheel cards, the 3 is better than a deuce. I'll mark this one for review, as I am not sure. Pretty good flop for this hand. No spades, but, you know, trips, decent trips, like with the 10. All of the, you know, when you flop trips, you want to see, okay, are my side cards higher than the unpaired board card, right? If I hit a 3, a 5, or a 10, those are all the nuts. If I hit a 4, it would also be a wheel, which would be nice. A pretty decent hand in the blind. All right, I'd say this person we can mark. Since I'm not suited to the ace, I'm actually going to go ahead and fold. This is sort of one of those complicated multi-way situations where something like the pre-flop matrix isn't going to tell you exactly what to do, because there's a limp and then a raise and then a couple callers. You could say, okay, how would I, play big blind squeeze versus either cutoff or hijack? Those would be reasonable approximations. Probably a little tighter than you would play against a hijack open is what I would guess. But, you know, they don't have every possible scenario in there. So unless you get your own sim going, you're going to have to kind of use basic principles. And here the basic principle I was using was like, I'm suited to the queen, not the ace. If I was suited to the ace, maybe that's a hand I call with. This feels like the sort of hand that I can over limp. Bad structure, you know, pretty bad suitedness in terms of, yeah, it's suited, but it's suited to the 6, and I have a bonus bad card, right? But that player, I'm happy to play some flops with them. I think if I flop some nutty things, I'm going to win more money than I should, because they're going to bet more than they need to. Wow, they're betting $1 here. I feel like they probably, like with the 492 being all that's left, what did they have? They had 3 pair. Okay. Yeah, given how much money was in the pot, well, it must have been 38, yeah, about $30 before the river. I think it's fair for them to just put the last $5 in with their 3 pair. It's not necessarily good, but it can't be that bad, because, you know, just pot odds and such. Betting $1 was a little peculiar, given that the other person only had 4. I think a check might have been more in order, and try and see if the other person wants to bluff a hand like 4-5, which whiffed. All right, ace, queen, jack, 9. I will certainly raise this against a limper of this sort. Against 2 limpers, I'm still going to raise it. I believe this is a hand that I want to open from the low jack from all positions. And in fact, if I was double suited, I think it would be a very good 4-betting candidate. You know, it's not quite smooth. Maybe make the jack a 10 and it's more of a 4-bet candidate. But yeah, I think this is a hand that, you know, I'm blocking an ace, so blocking aces. Here I do flop the nuts without a strong redraw, right? I have a nice redraw to a lower straight. That's not particularly helpful. I can't lose to a bigger straight. That's not something that's going to happen here. Let's see. How much do I want to put in, though? 26. If I pot it, then I can go pot and get all in on the turn. I don't think I'm trying to figure out. Am I going to even get action? Yeah, let's just pot it. I feel like that can't be that bad. You know, choosing the bet size I think is a little tricky here. Just in terms of deciding, do I want to make this a 2 street game or a 3 street game, right? Clearly there's enough money in that I can get all of the chips in. And now there's enough money in that I can just put all of the chips in on the turn. So that was kind of the idea on the flop, was that I wanted to make that possible. Yes, this person can have a flush draw. Yes, they can have a flush draw to go with their straight, right? But I have the queen of clubs. That's nice. I don't really want to get it in against a straight plus. But given that I had the queen of clubs, that helps. That makes it harder for people to have those hands. Rainbow queens with a 9 and a tray, I think, are quite poor and are a fold. They might even be a fold on the button. So I will mark that one for touching up. And I will mark the ace, queen, jack, 9 just to talk about how, sizing the flop bet mostly. Okay, 8, 7, 5, 4. I think this is pretty decent. It's single gapped. It's 4 cards to a 5 card straight. The gap's in the middle, not ideal, but better than the gap at the top. I'm going to call this, play a 4-way pot, and if I catch a really nice low flop, then then maybe I can win a big pot. But I'm out of position. I have a very small flush draw, and the board's already paired. So this was not what I was looking for, right? Having the 8 high suit, the idea is like it'll add equity if I flop something else good. Right, it's not like, oh, maybe I'll make an 8 high flush. Unless it's an 8 high straight flush, it's not gonna have a lot of value in a multi-way pot. It's mostly just like the additional equity from having those cards be suited. And I will mark this as a pre-flop spot. I think it's probably fairly straightforward call, but it could be close. And I want to see whether the hands in the vicinity, like, does it have to be 8, 7, 6, 5? I feel confident that would be a call in this spot. Pretty confident. I don't know. I haven't done a whole lot of like how do you play against in these squeeze spots in the big blind. So that's definitely a scenario where I want to put in further study. And in terms of study, I'm not trying to just like pick a spot and then study the spot. I'm kind of letting the spots come to me. I'm using more of a interlaced sort of learning strategy. All right, against the min raise, I'm very tempted to come in, but my side cards are just so poor. I'm suited to an 8. 8 connects to the jack. The deuce is just a garbage card. I think folding this here is fine. But yeah, I'm kind of trying to have sort of what I learned one day, not instead of just studying a thing and then just only doing that thing. First of all, partially because I am playing every day. So it's not possible to like really only zone in on one thing. But I'm kind of letting the pre-flop situation sort of like flow through me. And they come to me as they come to me, and I learn from them and then review them. And hopefully I do feel like my intuition is getting substantially stronger in terms of I haven't looked at all thousands of sheets of data in the PLO matrix, but I've looked at a lot of them, and seeing kind of what you do in one spot can give an inclination of what you probably do in another spot. Understanding kind of how certain types of hands work and kind of the hand value you're looking for in certain situations. Since there's just so many combinations and so many situations, but especially just the raw number of combinations in Pot Limit Omaha, on any kind of Omaha, it just gives us not a very manageable amount of material to just like memorize raw the way, you can look at a Hold'em pre-flop chart and be like, okay, those are the hands I play in this spot. Here you have to look at a lot more charts to figure that out in just one spot. So I think this kind of intuitive understanding is going to have a lot of value. Threes with a 4 and a queen suited to the 4, pretty much just a garbage folding hand. They do min raise, and I think because they min raised and because they're playing kind of the way they're playing, I'm going to take a flop. Highly questionable, very, very much not a very good hand. I do have the bottom end of the straight draw, and I'm blocking hearts, so you could make a case for occasionally stabbing here, I guess. I think I can just go ahead and give up in, Anyway, though, get the free card, maybe hit a 3, maybe hit a 2. A 7 would be like, All right, double suited king, single suited kings, sorry, with a 3. The 3's a very garbage card, so I'm very much playing a 3-card hand. The only times playing 3-card hands are really going to be appropriate are if the 3 cards are very strong, which they're pretty strong in this case, or I am going to check here, though. This board is not really what I had in mind. The turn is also fairly poor. Also the situation where there's a button limper who's very loose, and I'm the small blind. I think I can play more hands there. I can get away with having a 3-card hand. Of course, if I had a 4-card hand, if the 3 or if the jack and the 3 connected in some way, there's a much better chance they would have hit that board. Here, 10s with the 5 and the 2 are just pretty trashy. You know, single suited, maybe I'm supposed to play, I think I'm supposed to play most 10s, but this is among the worst combinations. The 5 not even connecting to the 10. We'll throw this one in the pre-flop heap, though. I do think there's some spots where I'm probably playing too timid post-flop. And, you know, a while ago I had an expression, when in doubt, bet it out. I think that's more applicable to a Hold'em sort of situation than an Omaha scenario where, you know, not a lot going on here. There are some good flops I can catch, but I certainly don't want to be raising. I have a double gut shot, and if I did hit the 10... I don't have a double gut shot. I have a single gut shot. I don't know what I'm talking about. If I do hit the 8, then the queen's blocking the bigger straight. Now I have a double gut shot. In fact, now I have a full wrap. And my opponent doesn't seem like really into the hand. So, like, let's just take the pot unless they're being weird. Yeah, we'll just take the pot. There were a lot of cards that were going to give us a good or pretty good hand on the river. So if they called, we'd have a lot of ways of winning the pot. Also potentially just betting again. And this hand's garbage. Sometimes short-handed, I think, and by short-handed I mean this is a 6-handed table, right? Which would be a full table if we're playing 6 max, but it's a short-handed game relative to like a full ring table, which would be 9 or 10 players. So, I think this I would open from the cutoff, so I'm going to isolate against this player, and by isolate I mean try to isolate and see what the blinds want to do. They say, yeah, okay, you can isolate, that's fine, that's cool. King high board, queens. I think queens are one of the hands, the last hands that I'm going to want to bet on a king high board. That's certainly true in Hold'em. I also don't have much other equity. I'm not really blocking anything that I want them to not have. So unfortunately, this is just one where I'm going to give it up. This 6, 8, 9 business is really a lot better for their range than it is for my hand anyway. And I mean, they can just have a king. All right, 6s single suited with a 3 and a deuce. The 3 and the deuce are very poor. If I was double suited, I think this, I'm actually not even 100% certain this is an open if it's double suited. I think it is, but the 3 and the deuce are very bad cards. And I would have made the very bad flush, 3 high flush. But yeah, this, you know, shorter than 6, right? Whenever the table gets smaller than the number of players that we're used to. So in this kind of game, we're mostly used to playing 6-handed or 5-handed. Then when it gets 4-handed, 3-handed, 2-handed is a separate special case. We'll leave that alone. But when it's 3-handed, 4-handed, even 5-handed, those aren't categorically different from 6-handed. It can feel different because there might be things we're doing in a 6-handed game where maybe we're giving up some value by playing a little tighter in some of the spots that would occur in a 3-handed game, a 4-handed game. Basically, a 3-handed game is a subset of the 6-handed game where the first 3 players have folded, right? It's equivalent to that. Sure, there's some card removal business that we're gonna ignore. I'm gonna fold here. Where if you're in a 6-handed game and the first 3 players folded, like there's probably fewer aces that are folded and more 2s and 3s, stuff like that. And in PLO, I think that is more of a real consideration than it is in Hold'em. Because there's just more cards, right? More cards have been folded, so if they're more likely to be low than high when they get folded, it's kind of like card counting in blackjack, right? The count in the deck, in the stub, in the cards that are left is, I don't know whether it be higher or lower let's see, I guess the count would be lower. There's more of the cards you want in there, right? So that would be something to consider, but ignoring that, the three-handed game is basically just a subset of that six-handed game. So it folds to us on the button. We should play basically what we would play in a six-max game if the first three players folded, right? And the thing is, if we're used to playing six-max, sometimes maybe we won't take as much advantage of our buttons as we should. Whereas in a three-handed game, it's more important that we're taking advantage of that situation where we get to be the button, because it's going to be a larger percentage of the hands that we're involved in, that we're dealt, right? Similarly, in a six-handed game, we can kind of under-defend the big blind, the small blind. We can play not as accurately in those situations, and it won't hurt us as much because those are a smaller percentage of our total hands. Whereas in a three-handed game, well, 2/3 of the time we're in one of the blinds, right? So we need to play those better, but we don't need to play them looser, right? The idea isn't like, oh, we need to play more hands to make up for the fact that, you know, the blinds are coming around more. No, we just need to play them correctly, right? And so we should just always be striving to play each situation as well as we can and try to overcome the psychological effect. Very good hand here, obviously going to raise. The psychological effect of, oh, there's fewer hands, the blinds are coming around faster, I need to play more hands. No, you need to continue to try and play your best, most accurate game. All right, aces here, not blocking any of the board stuff. I do have a gut shot. If I get check raised, I'd be very unhappy here. If I check one and then sort of a middling card comes off, I think I'm in pretty good shape. By middling card, I mean basically 8 through a jack. That would be one of those cards. However, the clubs did get there. Again, I don't have any clubs, which is one of the reasons I'm going to continue checking. Hopefully my opponents will give me a free showdown. The queen isn't a great card, as in anybody who flopped top pair now has trips. Also, anybody who flopped a set or two pair now has a boat. Flushes are still possible. I'm a little curious, like, what's actually going on here. Where the player who bet, they bet half pot. I feel like maybe they've got a flush. I feel like a boat maybe bets bigger. They can have a boat. I think trips would be very thin, so I don't think they're going to have trips. They do have a flush. They have the nut flush, plus they're blocking. So that queen is an important card, right? The fact that they're holding the queen means they're much less likely to run into queens full. However, at the same time, this is a hand that I want to raise. At the same time, they have the ace, king, and queen of clubs. So they're trying to get value from maybe a stray queen, which they're blocking, and maybe a smaller flush, which they're blocking. So the queen of clubs is both a good and bad card to have in your hand there. You'd rather have the other queen, right? You'd much rather have the other queen. Let's see what they got called by. They got called by ace, king, 9-3. So their opponent had a two pair. So I actually had the second best hand there, which is, you know, okay, cool. Gut shot, not to the nuts, backdoor nut flush draw, 3 opponents. Let's see the turn. The turn is no help. It's not that likely to really help anyone else either, but I think we can safely let this one go. You know, pretty good hand pre-flop, pretty terrible flop. So we move on. And yeah. I'm still thinking about the half pot bet that our opponent made earlier, which I think it seems appropriate to the flush. I wonder whether it's kind of a tell in terms of they probably don't have the boat, whereas, you know, would they go bigger with the boat? Would they pot it, trying to get, you know, value maybe from an ace high flush or from smaller boats if they had a big boat? I think in any situation, I think that the half pot makes some sense because it didn't feel like anybody else had that much. So if you're trying to get value, you don't have to go that big. And if you're trying to get people to fold, you don't need to go that big. Although this, let's make a note about this. Let's see, what did they do? They calls river bet with 2 pair on paired flush board. So that's, you know, that's someone that we can make those thin value bets against. And maybe not so much with the ambitious bluffs, right? We're probably going to try to avoid making any really big, elaborate, oh, I've got the nut blocker. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care that they don't have the nuts. They have their hand, and if they want to see the showdown, they're gonna. So that doesn't mean not to ever bluff. It just means to try and ascertain whether or not that player might have any interest in the pot, and if they have really none, then maybe just take it down. And the other hand, I mean, there was no indication that they had any particular interest in the hand, but they had, checked twice to the pre-flop raiser, which is less of an indication of disinterest than if they're out of position and maybe they were the pre-flop raiser themselves and they're like, check. Especially like, I think we had the blind versus blind scenario versus them earlier. All right, so we have a limp fold, open limp fold in low jack, multi-way. So that's interesting that they decided there's some hands that they want to call and then fold to a raise, despite the fact that the people who came in are quite loose. So I'm not sure how I feel about that, like qualitatively. We see the hands that people came in with, queen, queen, jack, deuce with a suit. I'm not so sure that you really want to be coming in with the deuce in the small blind, but not like super out of line. I mean, they had queens and they had a jack and they had a suit. And the other player had a double suited hand. Let's pop that up again. Display last hand. Yeah, ace, queen, 10, 5. Like, I think you can 3-bet that probably. That's a pretty good hand on the button, especially, right? 3 Broadway cards, 2 suits. Yeah, so I think not a whole lot to be gleaned there. Like, just because somebody's playing 80-some% of their hands doesn't mean that they can't have the very good hands as well, right? They still get dealt all of the best hands just as often as everybody else at the table. It's just that mixed in there's going to be a lot of the weaker hands that most of us would just let go. Right, the turn is a kind of interesting. It changes the nuts in terms of just as a bigger set possibility, but the river is much more of a wow. Okay, so they had very similar hands in terms of which cards they have. Both had ace, a 5, one had another 5, the other had a small pair, and somehow the 5s won. So that's cool. Open limp cut off. As always, the games are very good this morning. I'm thinking in the next... Oh, what happened? Flush? Oh, boat. Okay, so bottom 2 pair against flush draw and some backdoors. I don't know what the equity was on the flop. I believe it's pretty close, right? Yeah, 55-45. That's pretty close. And then the turn was very good for the one player, and the river was very good for the other. All right, again, we have a limp call from this player. I'm just going to go ahead and give him the level up. Green. Oh, okay. Spicy. Wow, okay. Okay, that's interesting. They decided that's a player that they want to get it in with, even with not super strong hand. So single suited 6s. I think there was a whole thing about this, right? Single suited 6s, and I kept saying single suited 6s. Do I want to? This player could have a lot of hands. Yeah, so they have a lot of hands that are pretty questionable. King Jack Jack 3. I'd say that was a 3-bet? Really? 3 bets. King, Jack, Jack, 3, single suited versus my, I think hijack RFI. Exclamation point. Once they do put the 3-bet in, calling the 4-bet from this other player makes a lot of sense. But now I'm just noticing they're 100, 100, 100. So, they like to put the raises in. And we're back. I had a little bit of a power outage, so the session ended prematurely, and I'll get into some discussion about changing formats or scheduling and whatever at some later date. For now, let's just look into these hands. I've got 5 pre-flop spots and 2 post-flop spots, so I'll try not to belabor them too much. We have a limp, and I have 10s with a 5 deuce, a single suit. I folded this hand and thought, yeah, it's probably a clear fold in this spot, but let's make sure. And also curious, what am I supposed to do with this hand on the button if it folds to me? So 10, 10, 5 deuce is a fold on the button. Not that close. Most 10-10 single suited RFI on button, but not weak 3x and 2x or marginal side cards suited with bad suit, right? So lower than lower 7 and lower, basically. Okay, so that kind of gives me an idea about this hand. In the cutoff, I think it's not even really close. And whether I should use the cutoff range or the button range, I think in this spot I'm going to go somewhere in between, as there is a limper, so that would lead me to use the cutoff range, but the limper's so loose that I think, you know, maybe I can go a little wider than my regular cutoff range because their range is so wide. All right, so that hand I got right, I'm happy with, and I think had a correct assessment that the 5 and the 2 are just very bad side cards. Here, I have a squeeze spot against the cutoff, which we can look up directly. My theory was that any 4 cards between 8 and 4, basically, are gonna be played here with a single suit. So I'll just look that up as 8-7 single suited, big blind versus cutoff squeeze. So big blind squeeze versus cutoff. And by squeeze, it's like it's a squeeze spot, so we can 3-bet and squeeze, or we can call in a squeeze opportunity, right? So squeeze declined. So 8-7, we'll look that up. 8-7-6-5, 8-7-6-4, 8-7-5-4. So that actually 8-6-5-4, I don't know about that, but so 8-7-5-4 single suited is call versus cutoff and cold calls, as are 8-7-6-5 and 8-7-6-4. That all makes sense. Single suited, right? And then let's just look up an adjacent hand. Let's see about that spot for like 8-6 single suited, 8-6-5-4 as well, and 8-6-5-4 single suited. So that's, I think, a useful piece of information. Now let's look up the big blind versus the cutoff. What if nobody had called? What if everybody folded? Do we play the hand the same? 8-7, it looks like only 8-7-6-5, good suit. So heads up versus cutoff RFI, only call with 8-7-6-5, single suited, good suit. So suited to the 8, good suite. Good suit, and fold the other hands. So this is an uncommon spot where we're actually going to play more hands because there's more players in the pot, right? And I think the idea here is that this particular hand gets, not that we're going to play more hands, but this is a hand that we're going to play with more players in the pot that we wouldn't play heads up, because I think it plays particularly well multi-way. The 8 high flush draw is not fantastic, but we're generally taking equity away from the best player, but we don't lose that much to the other people who enter, right? Whoever has the best hand has a chunk of equity, and we don't have that much against them, but if there's 2 other people, we have a similar amount of equity. We probably don't lose a lot to the other hands that can crack that hand. So, you know, maybe we'd have like 35% equity heads up, but here 4 ways we've got like 30% equity or something, which 4 ways is pretty decent. And I would imagine that these low cards are going to be a little bit more live when there's a raise and some cold calls, right? Because they're going to be weighted more towards the bigger cards. Is there anything to say about the board? No. Basically, we flop a weak flush draw and we check fold. Pretty straightforward. I don't think there's too much to say there. Very easy for either of these players to have a 10, and we're just super crushed. They can have bigger flush draws. They can have a boat already. There's no runouts that are going to make us very happy. All right, so there's 2 limps, and I raise. The question is, do I open this hand in the low jack? And I think the answer is certainly yes. The secondary question was, what happens if I get 3-bet? So we'll look at the low jack range, ace, queen, jack, 9. So single suited ace, queen. Ace, queen, jack, 9 is a raise in the low jack, and actually a fold out of position. So if I raised and then somebody 3-bets behind me, I'm supposed to fold. If I raise and one of the blinds 3-bets, I'm supposed to call. So that looks pretty straightforward. Ace, queen, jack, 9. Single suited is raise, fold versus in low jack, right? So that's what I'm using as an idea of what I should ISO, what I should raise with in the cutoff against 2 limpers, because I'm going to basically consider my position to be 2 positions worse because there's people already in. It's kind of an estimation, right? But that's what they suggest, and that's what I'll go with for now. So that's a raise fold in the low jack, unless good suit and IP versus PF3, which means in position versus the pre-flop 3-better, which means one of the blinds had 3-bet me. That's it for pre-flop. You know, I could try to get a little bit more information out of it, but I think that's fine. The flop comes really good, and it checks to me. I guess I can talk about this post-flop a little. Do I want to bet really large, or do I want to bet smaller? If I had more robust equity, I think I'd lean towards betting smaller. Here, the stack to pot ratio against 2 of my opponents, it's very low, right? The player on my immediate right and my immediate left, in terms of players dealt, you know, in this hand still, they both have about a pot size bet or even less, right? Like half a pot size bet in one case. So I just want to get it in on the flop against them. The other opponents only have about 3 pot size bets left. So, I mean, if I just look at my stack, oh no, my stack's bigger than that, but you know, 3 and change. So given that, I can go pot, and all the chips are in. And given that I flop the nuts, I do have a blocker to 2 pair and sets. I do have a blocker to flush draws. There's maybe not a whole lot that I can actually get value from. But, you know, there's no reason to give like King 10 a free card or a cheap card. You know, King 10 actually would probably be making a mistake if they're calling kind of almost any size bet. But a small flush draw, I don't really want to give them great odds to draw. So I think here I'm just saying, like, okay, you smaller stacks, if you want to get it on the flop, cool. And if you other people, well, get it on the flop, fine. I could be getting free rolled, but I do have the Queen of Clubs. That helps a little bit. I do have the Ace of Hearts. That helps in terms of not getting free rolled. It's probably not super easy to get value here. But I do have some outs to a better hand, right? I can make a runner boat because I do have a pair. But yeah, I think bet sizing half would probably be fine here, and I think full pot is okay-ish as well. If I had a hand like ace with the Queen of Clubs and like ace queen with clubs, I think that would be an interesting hand to use as like a full pot sort of semi-bluff, where I mean, it's not really a semi-bluff in that nobody's folding a better hand, but no, maybe that's not a very interesting play. It might get people to fold some straight draws, but I'd have the board so locked down that might be just a check. I don't know. Or just bet and who cares what happens, kind of get it in if you want, because you've got so much equity there. I think I gave myself too big of a hypothetical hand. And then here on the turn, it checks to me, and as you see, the stack to pot ratio is now less than 1-to-1. They've got $70. There's almost 100 in the middle. I just put it in, and I don't see too much else to do here. Absolutely no reason to give them a really like a bargain draw with a flush draw, which is, I think, their most likely hand. They could also have some kind of 2-pair stuff, so they fold. The board does pair, which, you know, could have been scary. Maybe I would have lost to that King 10 that I was talking about. But more importantly, the flush draw misses. And, you know, we get all their chips. Okay. Next hand. Ace 10, 5, 3. And I folded this saying, I think, not necessarily that it's close, but that with, you know, Ace 10 and a suited ace, I think a fair number of those hands I am going to raise here, but the 3 and the 5 aren't the worst side cards, but they're not very good. So let's take a look at my under the gun or low jack open raising range, ace 10 single suited. Yeah, I need better side cards, basically. So this is a clear fold. So ace 10, 5-3 single suited is clear fold, meaning it's not even close, right? It's not like a slightly better hand is going to be a raise here. In low jack, ace 10, 7-5 single suited, good suit, is worst ace 10 single suited to RFI in low jack. Let's take a look, like, what if I make the 10 a jack, right? What about like ace jack 5-3 single suited? That's still a fold. It's closer. All of a sudden I'm playing ace jack 5-4. You know, so the 5-4, I was thinking, what if I have a 5-4 here? I might have raised that, but apparently I want some actual paint, like a jack, a queen, a king, if I have a 5-4. But ace jack 10, then all of a sudden, you know, when you have ace jack, now you can have a third Broadway card. If you have ace 10, you can't have a third Broadway card, or you would call it ace jack, ace queen, or ace king, right? That's how it works. So I folded this. That is correct. I'm happy with that. Queen 10, 8-7, there was a raise to me, but I was pondering whether or not I would open this. I was thinking it's probably a fold, but it's probably close. But let's look it up. In the cutoff, Queen 10 single suited, it turns out that this is actually a raise. And actually Queen 10, 8-6, double single suited is still a raise with the good suit. So we'll say Queen 10, 8-7 single suited is RFI from cutoff. So I had that one slightly misjudged, as is Queen 10, 8-6, single suited, good suit. GS or bad suit. So good suit or bad suit is RFI from cutoff. So basically, yeah, this hand is good enough to open raise from this position. Of course, somebody raised ahead of me, so I fold. Pretty straightforward. I'm not going to, I mean, I can look that up, but we'll see how completely different the range is going to be, right? Versus middle position, look up Queen 10 suited. It's going to be, yeah, Queen 10, 9-8 is the only Queen 10 suited, only with the Queen high suit that we would play against this player. So that's this is a very clear fold with the hand I actually had. And fives with a 10 and a jack. All right, I remember this hand now. This was interesting. You know, I've got some stuff going on, potential good flops that come out. This is a decent one. One thing that I think I was commenting on while playing the hand is that there are very few turn cards that I'm going to like. And for that reason, I don't really want to just pile the money in. The other reason being that there's $4 in the middle, and there are, you know, $83, $67, $28 in stacks. So with the shallowest player, have a 7-to-1 SPR. I'd probably be okay getting in bottom set against that, but I don't think it would be fantastic. It wouldn't be like super great, because they would either have a bigger set or they would probably have a ton of equity against me. So I'm not really looking to get stacks in even against that player. Against the other players, I have double-digit SPRs, like 15, 16, and, you know, 21 basically. So in that scenario, I'm not like, oh, I flopped a set, let's get all the chips in, right? It's like, okay, I flopped a set, it's a pretty strong hand, likely best right now, a lot of bad turn cards, let's see what happens. Not like, let's build a big pot, right? So I check. We see a full pot bet from this one player who at this point in the session is an unknown, and then a call of the full pot bet. I actually think a fold might not be like the most ridiculous notion in the world. If I did want to raise, I could make it about $20, right? A little less, like 19, because there's 4 in the middle and basically 4 and 4, so that's 12 plus my 4 is 16 on top of the 4 that I would be calling with. I could make it about 20, in which case I could get it in with the player on my right. But again, getting it in at an SPR of 7 with just like a naked set, sure, I've got some blockers and a backdoor straight draw, but not anything really good, right? So I think this is a spot where I want to call, and then if the turn is a pretty decent card, then I can think about, you know, how I want to continue the hand. So the turn is a queen, I make a full house. Great. Do I want to suddenly lead out because I have a full house? Well, let's think about what happened. Queen is much less likely, but it made quads. 6-6 is just as likely as it was before. It made a bigger full house, and I have 1 out to a 5 to beat them. And Queen 6 and Queen 5 not very likely, But queen six, fairly possible. Those all made bigger full houses, right? So I'm far from the nuts. There's you know, 4 queens. There's queens full of sixes, queens full of fives, and sixes full. So I've got the 5th nuts, fives full. So I'm happy with my hand, and I feel more comfortable because I'm not really worried that people are going to draw out on me anymore. But I don't have a lot of incentive to try. I don't really want to push people out of the pot anymore, and I don't want to jam a lot of money in, because the times my opponents do want to jam a lot of money in the pot, they probably have me beat. So I check again, and they bet $5, which I think, like, well, this could be kind of a come hither, like trying to extract value from a very strong hand. It could also be a kind of weak hand. You know, maybe still betting with a flush draw for whatever reason, maybe betting with a queen, maybe trying to get a little bit of value out of like ace queen or something. So the other player calls, which again is like, well, I'm not too worried about them, and I could try to raise to get it in against them. But again, my hand isn't really vulnerable anymore, but it is, it's not marginal, but it's kind of like second tier value, right? It's not nutty. So I don't really want to get a lot of money in. I call, and the river's a spade, which is a good card. The opponent checks, and yes, Queen X is going to have, you know, Queen and 10 are cards that people play together a fair amount. So I'm certainly open to the, you know, well, I might have just gotten beaten. But a lot of people also can make a flush here. And I want them to have a flush. If they have a flush, maybe they'll bet. Maybe they'll call a bet. I don't really feel like leading out here is super logical. I could bet, basically with the idea that, look, if this other player was bluffing, they're probably going to shut down. If they have a queen, they're probably going to shut down. If they have a flush, maybe they'll just take the showdown. And if I bet, maybe I get called by a flush. But I went ahead and checked, and I think that's defensible. I think, you know, the fact that I have 2 opponents and there's a lot of boats, you know, and quads that can beat me. And, you know, they made a flush, and this player, I think, might have called a river bet. But at the same time, you know, I could have raised the flop, and if we look at the flop equity, I'm going to actually do that. Let's go there. Let's just launch the equity calculator. I think we're going to be surprisingly close to 50-50 on this flop. I might be ahead. We'll remove the 3rd player and just consider that they have garbage. But we'll take a look here. And yeah, so I'm ahead, right? I have 57%, 56.5%. But getting the money in with 56% isn't super awesome. And if they sometimes are going to have me crushed with a set, then all of a sudden that would go from super awesome to like super terrible, right? So I'm pretty happy with the way this hand played out, and I think we can proceed to the next one. All right, ace king 6-6 with a suited ace. I raise here. I think this is a clear raise. I think pocket pairs with an ace and a king suited to the ace. I think we're going to play a lot of those in most of the positions. I did say that I think I fold this to a 3-bet. Let's take a look at that assumption. Now, as the hand played out, there was a 4-bet all in. You know, in that case, I think folding is just very straightforward. Also, I failed to notice when this person raised that they were raising like 100% of hands so far. So that would be a reason to like maybe not raise fold this hand, right? And by maybe not, I mean like definitely don't raise fold it if your opponent is just bombing every hand. Maybe develop a limping strategy. I don't know. Maybe tighten up a little bit and then just punish them with your best hands. But I'm taking a look at 6-6, and most suited aces are going to continue, and ace king 6-6 is actually going to be raise call. So ace king 6-6. Single suited, good suit is RFI call in hijack, right? All suited, let's see, 6-6 with suited ace are RFI, except 3 and 2, right? So ace 6-6 deuce and ace 6-6-3 are going to be hands that I'm going to fold here, but all of these, and also 6-6 with second pair is always RFI call from hijack, right? So now we know that. This hand, some of the other ace X hands like ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, if I raised and got 3-bet by the button, I would fold. I would actually be supposed to fold. And in this case, I do fold. I have the third player in there. It turns out that, what do they have? You know, they've got hands, right? But the point is if somebody's 3-betting me with king, jack, jack 3 with a suit, yeah, suited to the king, that's nice, then I probably don't want to be folding my, raise folding my ace, king, 6, 6. And this isn't even going to be the bottom of their range. Okay, that's it for the session review. Thanks again so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, which you are, because this actually isn't on Twitch because my power went out and I had to record this a few hours after the stream, then if you'll be so kind as to go ahead and subscribe and give a like, it really helps the channel. And I guess it does some things for you, like it'll tell you when I have videos and stuff like that. Value proposition, blah, blah, blah. Okay, have a great day. Cheers.